Welcome to Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startup businesses to be wildly successful. Today, my guest is Nicole Porter from Monomoy Social Media. And we're going to be talking about some social media essentials for startup businesses. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
This is so cool. So social media is just such a generic term. And so what's the first thing startups need to do when they're thinking about social media?
No, I think the very first thing that I would recommend to any startup is probably just to focus, right? Don't feel like you have to be everywhere because that can be so overwhelming, especially to a startup. So really pick just one or two platforms that you know your customers are going to be on, and then really focus your efforts on those two rather than thinking you have to be every single place that's out there.
And knowing where your customers are is a very important piece of research to do in advance, right? And it's my
Absolutely.
understanding that a lot of investors are on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I would recommend LinkedIn for that, or Twitter. Twitter can be very active for that type of person. So depending on who you want to reach, absolutely, you really need to pay attention to, where you're showing up. If you're a local bakery, then maybe Instagram's the place for you. But if you're looking for investors, or, you're a financial advisor, then LinkedIn and Twitter are probably going to be better places.
Okay. And are there particular rules for different platforms?
Every platform has its own unique set of rules. Every platform has its tips and tricks and, little algorithm changes. And, I'm sure I could go on all day about what those are. But I will say that if you really just show up as yourself and you produce quality content and content that your people want to see, and you make an effort to interact with other people on these platforms, no matter what the algorithm is, no matter what the rules are, you're going to go further than you would if, you were on 12 platforms and just, constantly posting and it's all generic, just so really being yourself and talking to other people, those are the main things.
Until you actually establish your brand, you are your brand. So as a startup, you need to be thinking about what's the message you have and what do you think your customers want to hear from you? Not so much what you want to tell them, but what do you think they want to hear? Are there suggestions for how often to post or times to post or any of that?
It really depends on the platform, but as a general rule of thumb, I wouldn't post less than 3 times per week. Beyond that, you can post as much as you want. If you're on a place like Twitter, you might want to be a little more active, where if you're on a place like Instagram or LinkedIn, maybe 3 to 5 posts is probably going to do it. So again, that focus, and then figuring out where your clients are, your contacts that you want to get in touch with. And then, okay, how many times am I going to post, and what are the rules over on this platform? And again, depending on the platform, that depends on what times you're going to post as well. Twitter, that tends to be either really early morning or late at night, because people tend to check right before they go to bed or when they're getting up in the morning. If you're on LinkedIn, people tend to be most active right before lunch. So they'll go and they'll check and they'll, post right around that time. So like 10 to 12. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, usually it tends to be in the evening, when people start to relax after dinner, that type of time of day. And then they're checking their social most often around that. So again, it really depends on the platform and the people you're trying to reach as to when you're showing up and how often you're showing up. There's definitely things you can use to schedule it out. And that's definitely one of my startup tips is batch your content, right? A lot of us, we wake up and we're like, okay, what am I going to post today? And chances are, if that's what you're doing, then you probably aren't going to post at all. So if you batch out your content and schedule it ahead of time, then you're going to be much more likely to have a consistent content schedule going out. For Facebook and Instagram, I recommend using their business suite. It's a free thing from them. If you're on Facebook or you're on Instagram and you're taking people off of those platforms, then they're not making money. So it's really important to keep people on these platforms. So they like it when you use their in-house tools. And so if you use their business suite, your posts are going to go further than they would if you're using a third-party scheduler. Twitter also has its own scheduler. So you can go in, create a tweet, and schedule it right in Twitter. The only one that I use that doesn't have its own in-house scheduler is LinkedIn. And so I use Buffer for that. And that's another free one. I like it. It's very easy to see their layout. It's very easy to make edits. And you can hook up 3 different platforms. So if say you had a LinkedIn page and a LinkedIn profile, you could hook them both up for free. And you can schedule up to 10 posts at a time.
Talk to me a little bit about the types of posts and how much effectiveness each one has.
So I think the number one thing with any post is to really be yourself and kind of show behind the curtain, show behind the scenes. Especially if you're a startup, people want to see that process. They want to know what's going on, and you can really interest people in what you're doing if you're just starting. It's nice to have a variety of content as well. So you don't bore people, right? You don't have one type all the time. So video is definitely the number one form of content. That's going to go further than anything else, just because all the algorithms are pushing video, especially short form video, like a TikTok or a reel. You don't have to dance. You don't have to sing. You don't have to, point if you don't want to. It doesn't have to be silly. You can use that type of content. You can make those on Canva. There's a lot of free software out there where you can create slideshow style videos or things like that. And just to get that type of content out there, and then, show a few photos of yourself to bring that personalization in if you don't want to sing and dance and point to things. So that's probably the number one form of content right now. But pictures, quotes can be good as long as you tie them into your purpose. It's not great to have just a generic quote for no reason, right? Like, you really want to tie things into what you're doing and make things really personal. That's why people are going to follow you. They're not going to follow you because of what you're selling them. They're going to follow you because of what you're giving to them. And depending on your audience, that can be, a number of different things. If you're giving them entertainment, if you're giving them knowledge, there could be different ways to do that depending on your industry and what you can offer.
Okay. So are there tips for encouraging engagement or encouraging additional followers?
Having a call to action on all of your posts, not a buy my thing call to action, but just a regular call to action, can help immensely, because you need to tell people what to do. You need to tell them what action you want them to take after they read your post. So that's an important way to get more engagement and therefore more followers. The second thing, and this is missed by almost everybody, is you need to be social on these platforms. Okay. It is social media and it's not made for marketing. So you have to think about, like, why are people on these platforms? And they're on there to catch up with people, to see pictures of kids and pets and vacations and people's dinners, and, see what's happening in their industry on LinkedIn, catch up with industry news. So if you can add some value to that conversation, engaging with other people and basically giving to other people what you want to get from them is really important. And many people don't make time for that. And it doesn't have to be a crazy amount of time. You could schedule a half hour a day, half hour 3 times a week. And I'm going to go interact with these 10 people and then be done. Focus, schedule it in, batch it out, and be yourself. Those are the biggest things.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Nicole Porter from Monomoy Social Media. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. So join us again for Stuck, Time to Improv.